Hey there, this is the Resistor Vic podcast. I'm here to get folks thinking about politics as something that's really about regular people like you and me, and to realize that together we can make a difference. Hey, I'm Vic Myers. Welcome to The Resistance. This is episode 10 of the Resistor Vic podcast, Guardians of Pedophiles, the new GOP. And this is only the 8th attempt to record it. I had the episode, took me a couple of tries, I got it. And then the news changed, and it's like, oh, you know what? I've got to include this. So I started all over. And then it got too long. Then time after time. Then technical glitches. Can you hear my cat? Anyway, I am stubborn, so I'm going to get her done. Why did I say that the new GOP is Guardians of Pedophiles? I'm not the only one, right? You don't have to look very hard to find other podcasters and content creators all over the internet saying that the GOP stands for Guardians of Pedophiles. And I'm going to justify why I'm saying it, but I'm also going to state that we can't say it too much. We can't say it enough. We can't say it frequently enough. We can't say it in enough places. We can't say it loud enough. We can't say it in enough languages. The GOP is the guardian of pedophiles, and I'm going to back that up just like so many others have. Before I get there, though, I want to talk about a couple other things that you might have missed in the news. One of them is this guy named Jared Lane Weiss. Mr. Weiss was on trial as recently as last January for his part in the January 6th attack on our Capitol. The guy is on camera telling other rioters to kill the cops. He's on camera calling the cops the people protecting the Capitol against a coup. He's calling them Gestapo and Nazis. Now, to be fair, I've been calling people in ICE Nazis and the Gestapo. But when I do that, it's because they are rolling up and taking people off the street without a warrant, without any identification, without anything having to do with crime, and totally unconstitutional. And the last time in world history that we saw that kind of behavior happening on a large scale, have you ever read Anne Frank? That's right. Germany, when the Gestapo was doing that, going door to door, snatching people. So I think I'm kind of justified in calling ICE the Gestapo. But Jared Lane Weiss was calling the men who were defending democracy the Gestapo. And now he is a senior advisor to the Department of Justice. Because even though he was on trial last January, his trial was ended when Trump took office and ordered that all prosecutions stop for January 6 defendants. And now this guy is a senior advisor in the Department of Justice. And I just think everybody should know about that. Hopefully you all heard about the constitutional edits last week. So if you haven't heard, what happened was, I think it was on August 6th, a couple of sections of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution just suddenly disappeared from the government website where you go to look up our Constitution. It was specific parts of Article 1. If you heard about this in the news or through social media, all you were hearing about was how habeas corpus was included in the parts that were taken away. And that due process was in the parts that was taken away. Well, technically, due process is enunciated in the Fifth Amendment, which was not taken down. But habeas corpus is part of your due process, so there's that. Everybody was talking about that, habeas corpus. I didn't hear anybody commenting on the fact that they took away so much more. And everybody was saying Section 9 and Section 10 of Article 1 is what was taken down. They did not mention that the last part of Section 8 was also taken down. They did not mention that when you take all of the pieces together that were taken down, they effectively neuter Congress. They make Congress nothing more than a symbolic body. Took away their power to regulate the budget, took away their power to hold the president accountable. It took away the power for them to make laws to control the military. It took away the part that said the military answers to Congress and to the laws and not to a king. It took away literally the part that said there will be no titles of nobility in America. They took all that away. Now, for sure, when you take down a website, it doesn't mean you actually took away the Constitution. You can't do that. The Constitution is still just as valid. But by doing that, they ran a test on us to see what we would notice. And I'd have to say America failed, because everybody was talking about habeas corpus, which was taken away. But they completely missed all of that other important stuff. The stuff that, if properly enforced, if held to be true, if the Constitution is honored, the stuff that would have kept Donald Trump from standing up today and saying that he's going to federalize the police in D.C. and that he's going to activate the National Guard, and then threatening to do that in other cities across America. That's the part that went down. And they said it was a glitch, just a glitch, an accident. Well, if that was the case, then why was it those particular parts that mattered so much on this very day? Why was it those parts, if it was just a glitch, that were taken down? Things to think about. And speaking about what happened in D.C. today, I searched long and hard to see what my elected officials had to say about Trump federalizing the cops and sending in the Guard and threatening to do that all across America. What did my U.S. senators have to say? John Hickenlooper and Michael Bennet. Michael Bennet wants to run for governor here next year. And John Hickenlooper, 72, 73 years old, wants to run for re-election. Surely these two statesmen must have had something to say about it, right? No. They're too busy counting their tens of millions of dollars. Or maybe they're golfing, or maybe they're having another fundraiser. Maybe they're going to talk to AIPAC. These guys get a lot of money from AIPAC. Maybe they were just a little too busy to concern themselves with extra constitutional behavior by our president, because they had absolutely nothing to say about it. But you know who did? Karen Breslin. Karen Breslin is a Democrat, a progressive Democrat, running for the U.S. Senate in Colorado. She is running in the primary against John Hickenlooper. This is what she had to say about it. Quote, Donald Trump took another step toward dictator status, claiming for himself the authority to take control over police departments first in D.C., and then hinting that Chicago and other cities will be next. The founders never intended for a president to be king, to possess unlimited power to harass, threaten, disappear, or even kill opponents. In controlling law enforcement, Trump gains the power to take exactly those actions, the same abusive actions he has taken through ICE. We have a carefully constructed government that divides power between states and the federal government, and of course, among the branches. Trump has taken a sledgehammer to the foundations of our government. He must be stopped. That's what was released by Karen Breslin for U.S. Senate. So, by the way, if you, like I, appreciate somebody who's willing to actually stand up and speak out and defend our Constitution instead of whatever the hell Hickenlooper and Bennett are doing, then go to her website, Breslin for Colorado, drop her a donation. I don't care if it's $1. Drop her something. Let her know that releasing this statement says that we see her, that we know she cares about our Constitution and our constitutional order in this country. Let her know that. Because the alternative is another dinosaur Democrat returning to Washington, D.C. to do absolutely nothing. And if you watch that press conference that Trump gave this morning, Karen Breslin, she said in here, the founders never intended for a president to be a king, to possess unlimited power to harass, threaten, disappear, or even kill opponents. If you heard what Trump said today, he said that by federalizing the police in D.C., they were going to be allowed to do whatever the hell they wanted. His words. So he's telling the cops in D.C. that they're welcome to go out and beat people or even kill people, that there will be no retribution if they do. His words, not mine. Anyway, let's get on to the subject at hand. Is it right? Is it justifiable? Is it okay to say that the grand old party is now the guardian of pedophiles? Well, here's my evidence. Let's go all the way back to Dennis Hastert. Dennis Hastert was the Republican Speaker of the House for many years in Congress. And he was there. If you ever heard of the Hastert rule, the rule that says the Republicans will not bring to the floor any vote that doesn't already have majority Republican support, the Hastert rule. They kept that rule. They kept his name on that rule, even though he went to prison. What did he go to prison for, Vic? He went to prison for molesting young boys. How long did he go to prison for? I don't remember exactly, but what I do remember is that he didn't go to prison for very long because a whole boatload of Republican senators and congressmen sent affidavits to the judge during his sentencing phase. They said, Dennis Hastert's a great guy. Yeah, Dennis Hastert, the child molester, is a great guy. They said, Dennis Hastert has given so much service to his country, if you call molesting young boys service. And because all of these Republicans sent these pleas to the judge, Hastert got a light sentence. Up next comes Jim Jordan, not accused of being a pedophile himself. But what he did while he was a coach in Ohio is he ignored his fellow coach molesting boys in the shower. Season after season, he knew what was going on, and he turned a blind eye, never said a word. It makes me wonder if the way he got to Congress was to go to that school's donors and say, you know how I've been quiet all this time? Why don't you donate to my campaign because I want to become a congressman? Wonder if that's how that works. Next up, Matt Gaetz. We all know that Matt Gaetz should have went on trial last year for trafficking young women. But instead, the Republicans running Congress kept his files secret. They refused to release the testimony from the committee hearings and the evidence that they found. They refused to refer him to the Department of Justice. Donald Trump tried to put him in his cabinet this time. A trafficker, an accused trafficker, I should say. Because the Republicans protected him, that didn't happen. He did not go on trial. And now we can look in the Trump orbit. Here's this Texas pastor, Robert Morris, indicted for child sex crimes, March 12th, 2025. So, he was one of President Trump's advisors until the heat from this got too hot that they had to cut him loose. They didn't say, oh my God, you were arrested for molesting kids? Get out. Nope. They kept him around as long as they could because they really didn't see a problem with him molesting kids. They only saw a problem with the optics. That was it. And then you've got all these guys working for ICE. Here's one. CPB officer indicted, arrested for child pornography, May 1st, 2025. I saw a video the other day of this gal went into the records and she found a whole bunch of ICE employees. And then she found a whole bunch of crimes by these ICE employees. put their mugshots up next to their ICE pictures. And these guys were bona fide criminals when they were hired. And some of them, a lot of them, were sex offenses, which is okay with this Republican Party. Committed a sex crime? That's right. Come over here. Work for ICE. Come run this committee. Be the Speaker of the House. Join Donald Trump's cabinet. Be his personal advisor. And that brings us to Ghislaine Maxwell. Moved to a federal prison camp in Texas. Why? To keep her comfortable. Because the most notorious, evil, widespread child sex trafficker possibly in American history, well, as far as GOP is concerned, it's not that big a deal. Let's make her comfortable since she didn't rat us out, since she didn't tell us what Donald Trump did, since she didn't reveal the list, since she's not screaming the names of all the millionaires and billionaires that came to Epstein Island. Let's make her comfortable. And it'll double as softening her image with the public so that they won't be as outraged when we give her a pardon. Because that's what the Republicans do. They take care of their predators. They take care of people who abuse children. As a matter of fact, they love to elevate sexual predators. For instance, just last week, a convicted sex offender, a well-known convicted sex offender, was in the White House. And what was he in the White House for? He was in the White House because he's becoming one of Donald Trump's advisors on matters concerning youth fitness. Lawrence Taylor, former NFL great, who is a convicted child sex trafficker. He was in the White House the other day. Because to the Republicans, raping 16-year-old girls is no big deal to them. Doesn't matter. It's not a crime in their eyes. That's why they love it when they hear that the age of consent in a lot of southern states is being dropped to 14. Hey, more of that. They don't value women. They don't see them as having any right to complain about anything. They don't see children as having any right to complain about anything because it's all about power and control with them. That's one of the reasons why eventually we're going to get the Epstein list. But at the end of the day, it's not going to matter because they are in power. They have the control. They will sweep it under the rug. They just have to hope that they can keep that list out long enough for them to consolidate and solidify the power and control that they have over us. That's the only thing they worry about with the Epstein list. They know it's going to come out. They know that victims are going to start coming out of the woodwork sooner or later and naming their abusers. They know that's going to happen. Sooner or later, somebody's going to get that list out there. They just need to make sure they've got a good grip on power and control before they do. And speaking of power and control, I worked for the Colorado Department of Corrections for 17 years. In that time, I learned a lot about sex offenders. And one of the primary things I learned was that with sex offenders, it's not so much about the sex. Their heinous, despicable, horrendous crimes are not so much about the sex. It's about them exerting power and control over their victims. Just like all the pedophiles and pedophile enablers and guardians in the current Republican Party. So yeah, I think calling them the Guardians of Pedophiles instead of the Grand Old Party is justified. And we can't say it enough. So there you have it, folks. Next week, I'm going to have on my podcast a guy named Steve Anderson. If you're on Substack, go and subscribe to Steve Anderson and sit down and start reading what he's putting out there. If you're listening to my podcast, you've probably at least heard of Timothy Snyder, his book On Tyranny, 20 Lessons. On Tyranny was written during the first Trump administration. Steve is taking history and psychology and our current situation today and putting together a picture that I think every American should see. It's incredible. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it. I want that conversation to show what Steve's all about. I hope that you'll go in and read up some of his stuff and send us questions to resistorvic@gmail.com. This is Tuesday morning when you're seeing this. Thursday night is when he and I are going to sit down and record an episode. So there you have it. Send us your questions. And that's going to do it for tonight. Thank you for making me a part of your time. I hope I made it worth your while. Good day. Well, folks, looks like we're back at the barn and it's time to call it a day. I sure do appreciate you spending your time with me. If you want to help keep this podcast going by supporting me, you can get a paid subscription on Substack, where I'm Resistor Vic. Or if you're the type that'd rather go to PayPal, I'm also resistorvic@gmail.com. Thanks again.